Coming in at number 10 is underwater arrowheads. In 2005, hundreds of arrowheads and tools, some 8,000 years old, were discovered along the Mercy River near Kudjimikujik National Park in the southwest region of Nova Scotia. Workers from Nova Scotia Power were doing repairs to generating stations on the river. As the water levels dropped in some areas, the riverbed was exposed for the first time since the dams were built 70 years ago. Due to this, hundreds of artifacts appeared in the mud. The quantity of the material, the quality of the material, the age range represented by the material, all is just fascinating for us, said archaeologist Bruce Stewart, who was hired to investigate. Pottery fragments, spear points, knives, and other items were found around 109 ancient campsites. One barbed harpoon was once used to spear salmon and eels 3,000 years ago, Stewart said. The discovery was kept a secret until the artifacts were sent to the Nova Scotia Museum once Stewart and his team finished sorting them. Number 9. $150 million of lost silver. At the bottom of the Atlantic for more than a century, a 150-year-old steamship had been found in 2003. The ship is the Republic, which sailed from New York in 1865, just after the Civil War, carrying 59 passengers and crew and a mixed cargo meant to help New Orleans recover from the war. About 100 miles off Georgia, battling a hurricane, it sank in waters a third of a mile deep. Now, its cargo of lost coins, experts say, may now be worth up to $150 million. That would make it one of history's richest treasure wrecks. It's a dream come true, said Dr. Donald H. Kagan, an expert on 19th century coins, who is advising the company that discovered the wreck. The company, Odyssey Marine Exploration of Tampa, Florida, who announced the find, said it hoped to retrieve all the coins. The company has retrieved more than 1,600 gold and silver coins, and none are dated later than 1865, tending to confirm the wreck's identity, said Greg Stem, the company's director of operations. For some reason, even the silver coins are in great condition. Part of it is surely the physical environment down there, he said. The icy deep explorers are finding can often preserve objects, even precious metals like silver, that normally corrode easily. This is incredible, as it's like finding real treasure. Number 8. The 2,400-year-old boat in the Black Sea. Archaeologists working with engineers from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, MAP, have discovered a 23-meter shipwreck that laid undisturbed for more than 2,400 years. The find is believed to be the oldest intact shipwreck ever discovered. Thanks to lack of oxygen in the Black Sea, and the fact that it was discovered a mile below the surface means it is exceptionally well preserved. The 75-foot vessel is thought to be ancient Greek, and it still has its mast, rudders, and rowing benches. Speaking to The Guardian professor John Adams, the principal investigator with MAP explained, a ship surviving intact from the classical world lying over 2 kilometers of water is something I would never have believed possible, and it will change our understanding of shipbuilding and seafaring in the ancient world. The ship is thought to be a trading vessel, however, up to now, the design has only been seen on the sides of ancient Greek pottery. This find is an archaeological first. The team have left the vessel untouched, apart from a small sample that was used to carbon date it by the University of Southampton. Number 7. Egyptian cities. Artifacts from ancient Egyptian cities preserved for thousands of years at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea went on display in Paris in 2015. The exhibit at the Arab World Institute in the French capital featured 250 artifacts from a pair of ancient cities discovered in the year 2000. It took 7 years of underwater excavation to retrieve the artifacts from a 40 square mile area of the Mediterranean Sea near Alexandria, Egypt. The objects, covered in sediment and partially protected by the sea, date back 2,800 years. According to archaeologists, the cities ended up at the bottom of the sea after years of natural disasters, including earthquakes and landslides. Many of the artifacts are believed to be tributes to the ancient Egyptian god Osiris. Number 6. first ancient naval battle. In November 2013, archaeologists announced the recovery of a treasure trove of artifacts off the coast of Sicily from the site of the first ancient naval battle ever discovered, including battering rams, helmets, armor, and weapons dating back 2,000 years. They are the remnants of the Battle of Edgei Islands, the last clash from the First Punic War, which took place in 241 BC, in which the Romans fought the Carthaginians in a battle that culminated from more than 20 years of warring as the Romans struggled to gain a foothold in the Mediterranean Sea. While the Carthaginians were much more powerful on the water, the Romans taped them and blocked off their sea route in a sudden attack. Up to 50 of these ships were sunk, which resulted in about 10,000 men perishing at sea. The ships and their artifacts had laid undisturbed on the seabed at a depth of 100 meters for more than 2 millennia. Number 5. Medicinal pills. In June 2013, a team of Italian scientists conducted a chemical analysis on some ancient Roman medicinal pills discovered in the Roletto di Ponzio, a 2,000-year-old submerged shipping vessel which sank off the coast of Tuscany, revealing what exactly the ancient Romans used as medicine. The Roletto del Ponzio was excavated by the Archaeological Superintendency of Tuscany throughout the 1980s and 90s, revealing a variety of fascinating cargo, including lamps originating in Asia, Syrian-Palestinian glass bowls, bronze jugs, ceramic vessels for carrying wine, and the remains of a medicine chest containing a surgery hook, a mortar, 136 wooden drug vials, and several cylindrical tin vessels, one of which contained 5 circular medicinal tablets. The tin vessels had remained completely sealed, which kept the pills dry, proving an amazing opportunity to find out exactly what substances were contained within them. The results revealed that the pills contained a number of zinc compounds, as well as iron oxide, starch, beeswax, pine resin, and other plant-derived materials. Based on their shape and composition, scientists have suggested the tablets were used as a type of eye medicine. Number 4. 5,000-year-old city. In the Peloponnesus region of southern Greece, there is a small village called Pavlopetri where a nearby ancient city dating back 5,000 years resides. The city can be found about 4 meters underwater, and it is believed to be the oldest known submerged city in the world. The city is incredibly well designed with roads, 2-story houses with gardens, temples, a cemetery, and a complex water management system including channels and water pipes. In the center of the city was a square or plaza measuring about 40 by 20 meters, and most of the buildings have been found with up to 12 rooms inside. The design of this city surpasses the design of many cities today. Now, research in 2009 revealed that the site extends for about 9 acres, and evidence shows that it had been inhabited prior to 2800 BC. Scientists estimate that the city was sunk in around 1000 BC due to earthquakes that shifted the land. However, despite this, and even after 5,000 years, the arrangement of the city is still clearly visible, and at least 15 buildings have been found. The city's arrangement is so clear that the head of the archaeological team, John Henderson, of the University of Nottingham, and his team have been able to create what they believe is an extremely accurate 3D reconstruction of the city. Number 3. 900-year-old sword. In October 2021, Shlomi Katzin, a resident of Atil, Israel, was scuba diving when he discovered several ancient artifacts in a Carmel Coast seabed, including a 900-year-old iron sword. He handed over the sword with its 3-foot blade and 2-foot hilt covered in marine organisms to the Israel Antiquities Authority. The sword, which was kept in perfect condition, is a beautiful and rare find, and it seems to belong to a Crusader knight. Near Dessefeld, inspector for the Israel Antiquities Authority Robbery Prevention Unit, said in a statement on the organization's Facebook page. The area where the sword was found contains coves that once served as a shelter for ships and where large cities such as Atlit sprang up. These conditions have attracted merchant ships down the ages, leaving behind rich archaeological finds, said Kobe Sharvit, director of Israel Antiquities Authority's Marine Archaeology Unit. Ocean waves and currents driven by storms likely shifted the sand on the seabed to reveal its items found by Kidzin, which also included anchors and pottery fragments. Number 2. The Malachite Man. A 2,000-year-old human skeleton was found when a group of divers ventured into a submerged cave known as Hoyo Negro. There, they encountered the remarkably preserved remains of a man dating back to 13,000 years ago. Named the Malachite Man after the green mineral deposits encasing him, his skeleton skeleton lays in pristine condition. Now, this ancient individual may be one of the earliest known victims of a rising sea level due to climate change. His extraordinary preservation, along with the findings of extinct animal remains in the same cave, has led to groundbreaking revelations about prehistoric life and the dramatic changes our planet has undergone. And coming at number 1 is 3,200-year-old boat wreck. Marine archaeologist and researcher at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, CNRNS in France, Julia Bodo announced the incredible discovery of a boat wreck in Zambratia Cove, Croatia, which was just dated to 1200 BC. The unique and rare find is a Bronze Age sewn boat, a type of wooden boat which is literally sewn together using ropes, roots, or willow branches. The boat measured 7 meters in length and 2.5 meters in width. The remains of the boat found are incredibly well preserved for its age, with stitching still visible in some areas and the frame largely undamaged. The different types of wood to construct it have been identified as elm, alder, and fir, and tree ring dating is currently underway, which will provide the date the tree was cut to the nearest year. The group have said they hope to finalize a 3D model of the boat and eventually a complete reconstruction.
And number 10, ancient Egyptian power tools. We all know how smart the ancient Egyptians must have been, but with their pyramids we couldn't even recreate today if we tried. But with this recent discovery, it seems like these dudes were more technologically advanced than we could have possibly imagined. So this researcher, Christopher Dunn, was basically Sherlock's homing his way through the remnants of the pyramids, looking at how the ancient builders must have made their stuff, and what he found was seriously mind-boggling. But to the untrained eye, it seems pretty innocuous. Just a simple ribbed core which would have been drilled out from the limestone and discarded during the pyramid's creation. Now those grooves you see when something's been cut. Now Dunn noticed these grooves on the sarcophagus in the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, but they weren't just any grooves. They were similar to what our modern bandsaws make. See, the thing is, the distance between these grooves were teeny tiny, about 0.05 of an inch. It's like trying to fit an ant between them. Now, nowadays, for us to get those marks, our tools would need to move way slower, but there's more. See, those ancient Egyptians weren't just good at grooving, they were drilling into granite like it was a piece of cake. The drilling technique, which was thought of as trepanning, left behind cores. Now, here's the mind-blowing part. Their drill went into the rock at a crazy rate of 0.1 inch per spin. Today, even with our modern diamond drills spinning at 900 revolutions per minute, we can only manage about 0.0002 inches per spin. It's a whopping 500 times slower than what the ancient Egyptian builders were doing. This means that the Egyptians had access to drilling tools that are more sophisticated than today's technology would allow. So either those dudes back then are smarter than we are, or they were assisted by time travelers from the future. Or both. Probably both. At number 9 is this 1.8 billion year old nuclear reactor. So almost 2 billion years ago, that's billion with a B, when humans weren't even a thought, let alone a species, there might have been a nuclear reactor just chilling in Gabon, Africa. Pretty crazy. In the 70s, these French cats bought some uranium back from there, thinking it was just regular stuff, but as it turns out, it had already been activated and mined. Cue the detective music. Now, scientists went Sherlock on this and found out that this place used to be a full-blown nuclear reactor for 500,000 years. And here's where it gets even nuttier. Dr. Glenn T. Seaborg, a big shot in nuclear science, like I'm talking Nobel Prize winning level over here, he said, hold up, this nuclear reactor can't be a natural formation. Why? Because for uranium to go nuclear, it needs conditions so picky you would think it was a diva. The water needs to be insanely clean, like way cleaner than usual. Plus, there's this special isotope called U-235 that's crucial for the party to start. The uranium-235 isotope levels here were just not enough for a natural nuclear rave. The U-235 levels found in this ancient reactor weren't actually high enough to kickstart this atomic party. So think about it, a nuclear reactor before humanity was even a thing. Time travel vibes or what? This artifact throws textbooks out the window. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. Number 8. this 2.8 billion year old sphere. It's even older than the reactor. So imagine stumbling upon these tiny round things in a South African mine, thinking that they're just kind of cute little rocks. But no, some folks argue that they might be the ultimate proof that time travel is real. Known as the Klerksdorp spheres are like celebrities of the geology world. People debate whether or not they're natural or handmade by ancient humans. Now here's the kicker. Well, it wouldn't be ancient humans because it's far older than our species. But here's the kicker. These guys have neat grooves on their surface, and they're tougher than tough, not even being able to be scratched with steel. Pretty wild, kind of makes you wonder how those grooves were even put there in the first place. These spheres are older than old, like 2.8 billion years ancient, which is super mind-boggling. But here's where the mystery deepens. See, nobody's really sure how these things were formed. Some say they're formed by nature, but those grooves in that hardness, it's a really tough nut to crack. Now this debate is huge. If these spheres were made by prehistoric monkey people back in ancient times, it's a game changer for the history books. But if nature's the artist here, well, it's one tricky piece of Earth's history's puzzle that we're still trying to figure out. These spheres might hold the key to unlocking some incredible secrets of our past. At number 7 are the 150,000-year-old pipes. Pipes, yeah, like the ones for plumbing, just chilling in this cave that dates back 150,000 years. That's way before our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were even a twinkle in somebody's eye. And even way before the ancient Romans figured out how plumbing works. But here's the kicker. When experts took a closer look at these pipes, they found something mind-boggling. About 8% of the material used to make these pipes couldn't be identified whatsoever. It's like trying to figure out what's in a secret sauce recipe, but with way more mystery involved. But there's more! These pipes aren't your run-of-the-mill kind. They're actually a bit on the radioactive side. Yeah, pipes that emit radioactivity kind of makes you wonder what the people putting through those pipes. Kind of makes you wonder what was in their diet. Now this isn't your everyday plumbing material. A geology expert thinks that maybe these pipes were formed when super hot stuff from way down in the Earth's belly rose up and solidified into tubes, which sounds plausible, but even this expert scratched their head and admitted that there's something pretty strange going on here. So these pipes could be the breadcrumbs hinting at the possibility of time travel being more than just a sci-fi dream. They're like a sneak peek into a world we thought only existed in wild sci-fi movies, but hey, the mystery remains unsolved. At number 6, the glorification of the Eucharist from the late 16th century. Ventura Salimbeni's painting in the Church of St. Peter Montalcino, it's in Italy. It's a head scratcher for sure. Imagine this, the experts, all knowledgeable about art history, were trying to explain this weird spherical thing in the painting that's what's supposed to be a creation globe, and the wand-like objects that are being held by Jesus Christ and God are symbols of divine power, but here's where it gets really interesting. Have you guys ever heard of Sputnik? That was the very first satellite sent into space by the Soviets way back in '57. Now picture this. There's a replica of Sputnik sitting pretty in the National Air and Space Museum, and when you get the painting and the Sputnik and you put them side by side, they're literally twins, separated by centuries. Same size, same shine, even down to the little prong. Now some folks entertain the wild idea that maybe Sputnik did a quick time travel stint swinging back to the 16th century. Others, though, they lean towards the UFO theory. Yeah, thing in the painting might just be a unidentified flying object. But here's the kicker. The mystery remains unsolved. Is this due to time travel? Is it UFOs? Jury's still out on this one, waiting for a Sherlock Holmes of the art world to crack open this case. Time travel? Maybe. UFOs? Possibly. At number 5 are the Nazca lines. These massive drawings, sprawling across the Peruvian desert, are seriously something else. They've been around for more than 1,500 years. Just imagine, back when there were no smartphones or drones, these ancient folks managed to create giant images that you could only fully appreciate from up in the sky. Now, the variety of these drawings, the animals, the shapes, and the designs are so precise, it's hard to believe that they were made without some kind of aerial guidance. Some folks think that they represent constellations, or maybe a sort of homage to gods, but the mystery here is still unsolved. In 2022, archaeologists stumbled upon 150 new Nazca lines. I mean, you'd think after all these years with Google Earth and satellites and whatnot, we'd at least found them all by now, but no, these discoveries just keep adding more questions. At number 4 is the Iron Pillar of Delhi. This thing has perplexed experts for ages. I mean, we're talking about an iron column that has stood tall for at least 1,500 years. Some even speculate that it might be older than that. And here's the kicker, despite all those years, it's rust-free. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. This pillar is 99.72% pure iron. It's impressive by today's standards even. I'm talking about a level of purity that even modern experts struggle to achieve. They've tried to replicate it and they can't crack the code. And get this, and they can't crack the code as even our iron is only like 99.8% pure iron, which is like 0.8% more, which is crazy. But what's even crazier is that it doesn't have any of the usual suspects found in modern high-grade iron like manganese and sulfur. It's just a pure iron anomaly. Engraved Nagisos of an enthroned woman with an attendant from 100 BC. This stone carving from over 2,000 years ago depicts a strange sight. A kid holding what looks like a laptop in front of a person seated on a throne. The artwork, chilling at the Getty Villa in Los Angeles, got some folks scratching their heads. The museum even claims this box is a container, yet one that's far too shallow to hold anything big. Now some say it's a jewelry box or a makeup box, comparing it to other stuff that... Now some say it's a jewelry or a makeup box, but what if it's not? Imagine if the folks who sculpted this used high-tech software like AutoCAD on their MacBook, which sounds pretty bonkers. This artifact seems to raise eyebrows because it's familiar to our tech, but it's from way, way back. At number 2 is the 2,000-year-old batteries. Imagine stumbling upon a set of ancient jars, which would be pretty cool on its own, but these aren't just any old jars, mind you. They're like the ancestors of modern-day batteries. Picture clay jars decked out with asphalt stoppers and iron rods, kicking it from all the way back from 2,000 years ago. This conveyance consists of a clay vessel inside which is a copper cylinder held in place by asphalt. Within the cylinder, archaeologists found an oxidized iron rod. So back in 1938, this German archaeologist named Willem Koenig suggested that these could be galvanic cells, perhaps used for electroplating gold onto silver objects. Nobody could prove the dude wrong, especially since all you need was to fill it with acid or alkalines. Considering all you need to do was fill it with an acid or alkaline substance to produce an electric charge. These jars, let's call them ancient batteries, can actually whip up more electricity than you'd expect, churning out just over a volt, which is pretty shocking, pun intended. Now, the battery wouldn't have been a very effective one, but still, ancient batteries. At number 1, let's dive into these ancient paintings. First is the Madonna with Saint Giovanni. This painting is famous for having a blob-like thing in the sky. I mean, we have Mary, baby Jesus, Saint John just chilling in a classic 15th century scene, but what is that disc-shaped blob to the right of Mary? It's got a guy and a dog staring at it. Some people speculate that this might be more than just the Holy Family going on here. Some think that those beings might be from outer space. Imagine that, extraterrestrials photobombing a centuries-old painting. Now, this other painting, the Inoculation with Saint Emetius, is a whole different story. This masterpiece illustrates the Gabriel angel giving Mary the heads up about baby Jesus. But hold up! In this painting, it appears like Mary's receiving the news from a beam of light coming from a strange otherworldly object. Some folks got way out there suggesting that Mary might have had an otherworldly encounter leading to her pregnancy with Jesus. So was Christ an alien? Probably.
Alien artifacts that have come from far out in space have somehow ended up on Earth.
They have led to scientists uncovering disturbing truths that definitively prove the existence of extraterrestrial life in space.
What are these figurines supposed to be? Would you ever think that they were meant to depict humans? Certainly don't look human to me, but it's not just because they're very old sculptures. I mean, they look intentionally not human. They look reptilian. The noses, or lack thereof, the eyes, if these were meant to resemble people, they did a bad job. Either that or these were really horrifying looking folks. But if they're not meant to be humans, then what exactly are they? The statues are often referred to as the Ubaid lizard men. The 7,000-year-old artifacts were uncovered in Iraq in the 20th century. There are theories as to what these things could be, but no definitive evidence. Unfortunately, we don't have any written records of the time, so determining the ideas behind people's artistic expression depression in prehistoric Mesopotamia, it's not really the easiest, but I'm pretty fascinated by the idea that there may have been some reptilian aliens visiting Earth around this time that people were depicting here.
Definitive proof of life beyond our planet found inside of a meteorite that landed in Sri Lanka back in December of 2013. Yeah. When pieces of the space rock were gathered and examined back in 2013, a shocking discovery was made. The debris of the meteor contained fossils, algae fossils, of clear extraterrestrial origin, according to lead scientist Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe. Because algae is technically alive, if Professor Chandra's science is correct, the discovery marks the first documented discovery of life that originated from outside of our atmosphere. While the legitimacy of the work has been debated amongst Chandra's peers, who claim that the algae may have been embedded into the meteorite during its time on Earth, the professor is standing firm in his discovery and has claimed that among the algae fossils he discovered were other organisms that are not yet identified and do not match anything discovered on Earth thus far, which of course is great news for those of us who are really hoping that Chandra's discovery of extraterrestrial life is legitimate and that the doubters are just mad they weren't able to make the discovery for themselves.
Are these sculptures of planes? They kind of look like stylized planes to me, but that would be impossible because these are thousands of years old. They're artifacts from what is known as the Kumbaya period, a pre-Columbian culture which was around from about 500 BC to 680. They were known for their skill in metalwork. I mean, obviously these things are lovely, but yeah, they really do look remarkably like modern airplanes. They have wings that don't really look like bird wings to me, and a lot of them even have what look like tail fins. So how and why were these created? Did these people somehow have knowledge of what the future of air travel was going to look like? Were they encountering beings with highly advanced technology? The official explanation is that these are depictions of animals, insects, birds, that sort of thing, and yeah, there's a very good chance that's all these are, but I can't deny how eerily accurate they look to modern flying machines. And here's another really interesting thing. In 1994, a group of German engineers actually built scale models of the Kumbaya artifacts to see if they could fly, and guess what? They did, with an added propulsion system of course, but the designs worked. They were aerodynamically perfect and could fly.
The Williams Enigmalith. What is it? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely from out of this world. It looks a bit like a rock with a plug, but it's not a rock with a plug, and it's far from being just an ordinary rock. The object was found in 1998 by a hiker named John J. Williams. He noticed a strange piece of metal coming out of the dirt on his hiking trail, and so he dug it up. When he did, he revealed a rock with 3 metal prongs sticking out of it. It looked somehow man-made and appeared to have some kind of electrical component to it. Why? Well, I'm not sure, but Williams, who is an electrical engineer, claims that the electronic component embedded in the stone was not glued or welded into the granite rock surrounding it, meaning that while it appears to have possibly been man-made, because electrical components don't just naturally exist inside of rocks, especially ones dated to be around 100,000 years old, it must be something else, perhaps from somewhere else, perhaps somewhere out of this world. While Williams is open to having others research the strange rock, he does have a few conditions. He must be present for whatever discovery is made, and the rock must remain unharmed. Even with these parameters, you would think that by using modern day tools and technology, we would have been able to get an answer as to what exactly the rock is by now, and where the electrical component is coming from and how it was embedded. But no such discovery has been made, leaving the leading theory to be that its origins are likely not of this earth, and that it likely holds the answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask yet.
No one is exactly sure what this thing is. It's been dubbed the Wedge of Aiud and was found in Romania in 1973. Workers came across it while digging during a construction project. It was found buried along with 2 large mastodon bones. The wedge is around 5 pounds and it's made of aluminum. Now this turns out to be pretty strange because aluminum wasn't widely used until the 19th century, but this thing is estimated to be much older, at least 250,000 years old. It's a very odd looking object. It looks like a modern art piece or something, but what exactly is it? Well, again, nobody really knows for sure, but one of the funnest theories, of course, is that it's extraterrestrial in origin, maybe having come off an ancient alien spacecraft. or something.
The Sumerian Triumph Tapestry, which appears to not only depict the succession of various rulers to the throne, but also the presence of UFOs hovering above the Sumerian people, is next on our list today. The tapestry was created in the capital of West Flanders province in the Flemish region of Belgium around 1538, and since then it has been the subject of many conspiracy theories, which makes sense considering the two alien spaceship-looking objects depicted in the top left corner of the piece. Now, if you know anything about the Sumerian people or the Anunnaki, you are likely well aware that even without the presence of the Triumph Tapestry, the Sumerians are a pretty good argument for the legitimacy of aliens having had a pretty prominent presence on Earth in the past. Adding the tapestry into the mix is really just the cherry on top of the extraterrestrial cake, because it confirms how the Anunnaki, the ultra-intelligent alien species that ordered the creation of the pyramids, arrived on Earth in the first place. If you don't know anything about the Sumerians, ancient Sumeria, and the Anunnaki, but would like to, I do have a video on them titled Ancient Sumerian Mysteries That May Never Be Explained that you can watch after this.
Next, we have the Casso artifact, known as one of the world's out-of-place artifacts. It was discovered in 1961 near Olancha, California. While out looking for geodes, these rock collectors found a strange rock that seemed out of place, and when they cut it open, they were surprised to find it actually had a metal core inside. The outer layer of the rock was encrusted with a hard substance, while the inner metal core was a cylindrical object that looked almost like a spark plug. This was not what anyone had been expecting to find, because the rock seemed to be millions of years old, far older than the age of modern machinery. So it sparked, see what I did there? It sparked a lot of curiosity. Some researchers think this is just a naturally occurring geode that somehow formed around a modern spark plug, but what if it's not the case? What if it's a piece of ancient technology left by an advanced civilization? Or even more interesting, an object that some extraterrestrial beings left behind a long time ago.
I'm sure by now we've all heard the theories that the pyramids were built by aliens, which is a fair assumption considering the fact that historians have been consistently unable to come up with an explanation as to how the construction of the pyramids would have been possible in ancient times. But what about other massive artifacts like Stonehenge, or perhaps the massive stone head that was found in the middle of the Guatemalan jungle in the 1930s? The statue dates back to before the Spanish Revolution, so prior to the Mayan and Aztec empires falling to the Spanish armies, which is strange considering 1, there is little to no way the Mayans living in the area could have sculpted the stone head and placed it in the area, and 2, if somehow they did, why doesn't it look like them? The statue's features do not mimic those of the ancient Mayans or Aztecs. Because of this, it is believed that the features once displayed on the head, which have since worn down due to revolutionary troops using the historic artifact as target practice, were actually the features of an ancient alien civilization that was far more intelligent than humanity, and that likely had a hand in the construction of the Mayan and perhaps even the Aztec empires as well.
This next one is actually 100% known to be from space. Back in June of last year, Harvard professor and theoretical astrophysicist Avi Loeb led an excavation to Papua New Guinea to uncover the remnants of a meteor that had crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and what they found were small spherical space rocks from deep in space, and there's still a question as to whether the object they came from was naturally occurring or not. What they do know is that the small spheres are made up of elements we don't have here on Earth. Loeb wrote, quote, "This is a historic discovery because it represents the first time that humans put their hands on materials from a large object that arrived to Earth from outside the solar system."
Finally, we have an incredibly mysterious extraterrestrial object discovered by the Betts family in 1974. That year, a mysterious fire had broken out on the family's property that destroyed 88 acres of woodland. When the Bettses went out to explore the area and search for the cause of the mysterious fire, they stumbled across a metal sphere with a diameter of just 8 inches and a weight of almost 20 pounds. At first, the family thought that the object might have belonged to the Soviet Union or perhaps perhaps NASA. They thought about leaving it where they found it, but curiosity got the better of them, and so they decided to take it home. About 2 weeks later, the family's son was playing guitar while sitting next to the strange spherical object when all of a sudden it began to emit a strange resonating sound that caused the family dog to act up. A while later, the family discovered that when they pushed the sphere across the floor away from themselves, it would change direction and return to the person who had pushed it. Not only that, but the object avoided being damaged at all costs, rolling up slanted tables to keep itself from crashing on the floor, and eventually it began emitting pulsing sounds seemingly out of nowhere. The strange behavior was witnessed by scientists as well as representatives from the military, so you don't just have to take the Betts family's word for it. At first, the Betts family refused to let the ball out of their possession, but after doors started slamming shut and music began randomly playing in their home, they handed it over to the authorities, who were shocked to discover that the metal ball was just that, a metal ball, or so it appeared. While there is no solid explanation as to why the sphere displayed such strange properties and caused so many strange things to happen, I think we can all agree that the most likely reason is because it came from outer space with a purpose that has yet to reveal itself to mankind.
People just love Vikings. They're one of the coolest types of warriors from history. Today we're diving into some of the creepiest artifacts that have been found that are from the Vikings. Alright, let's get started with a Viking burial pit. A burial pit full of decapitated Vikings. So in 2009, during preparations for a new road in Ridgeway Hill, Dorset, archaeologists made a pretty gnarly discovery. It was a burial pit containing the decapitated remains of 54 young men. The bodies had been dumped in a shallow grave, with their heads stacked on one side. Whatever had happened here, whether it was a or a ritualistic sacrifice, it all went down around the year 1000, right around the time Vikings were constantly pestering Anglo-Saxons, violently, mind you, on the south coast of England. They also did isotope testing on the men's teeth, which showed they were from Scandinavia. The main theory is that these men had been Viking mercenaries. It didn't look like they'd been killed haphazardly though. Their wounds looked like they'd been made pretty clean and methodically, so there's a good chance they'd been rounded up and sent back to Odin at the hands of a sword through the neck. Next on the list, we have Viking bog bodies. For starters, what are bog bodies? Well, they're bodies that were buried in bogs. Well, what happens in this case is that they end up being preserved relatively well, similar to mummification, but they're incredibly creepy. The skin becomes pure black. They end up looking like raisin people. Now, bog bodies aren't unique to Viking Age Scandinavia. They've been around in different parts of Europe. But in the case of the Vikings, it looks like they buried some folks in bogs intentionally, possibly sacrificially or as a form of punishment. One story goes that King Harald Bluetooth of Denmark drowned the Norwegian queen Gunhild in a bog after tricking her into coming to Denmark with the promise of a marriage alliance. There have also been a number of Viking Age bog bodies found with pretty gnarly wounds, showing that they had pretty agonizing deaths, and some researchers have said that this could be evidence of this type of burial being reserved for terrible criminals or unhonorable members of society. Next on the list, we have another mass grave, but this one ups the ante. We don't just have 54 dead Vikings here, we have over 250, well, 264 to be exact. So much freakier. The grave was discovered in 1979 in Repton, England by a husband and wife team of archaeologists. It was a bunch of Viking graves. They were digging around a church and found a pile of bones that turned out to be from the time when the Vikings were causing complete chaos in England. This was a big deal because it confirmed that the Vikings had been there wreaking havoc, like they did. More recently, scientists did testing on the bones to figure out exactly how old they were. They found out that the bones matched up with the time when the Vikings were in Repton, just like the original archaeologists thought. What's really interesting about this find is that there was a discrepancy in the carbon dating for years. At first, the archaeologists thought these were Viking remains just by, seeing them. But when the bones were carbon dated, it looked like they were from well before the Viking Age. But they hadn't accounted for how much fish was in the Vikings' diet, which can throw off carbon dating, they've recently found. So it makes the bones seem older than they actually are. So it was recently found that these were indeed Vikings though. The dig also turned up some other cool stuff like Viking weapons and coins. Next, we have the remains from St. Brice's Day. In 2008, the remains of over 30 fighting age men were found buried in a mass grave during an excavation at St. John's College, Oxford. They were believed to be Danes, some of the victims of the St. Brice's Day. Pretty dark day in English history. It happened on November 13th in the year 1002. The King of England at the time, Athelred II, also known as Athelred the Unready, not because he was always late, but because he just wasn't great at ruling, a lot of people thought. Well, he got really worried about all the Vikings hanging around in England at the time. The story goes that he was told that the Danes were going to take his life and then take over his kingdom. So he handled things. He came up with a plan, just kill all of them. All the Danish people living in England, just like Frieza did with the Saiyans. And there were a fair number of Danish folks living in England at the time. So on that day, all across England, Danish men were attacked and killed. Next on the list, we have Andvari's Cursed Ring. So this thing is straight out of Norse mythology, so a bit different than most of the stuff on this list, but the story is pretty fascinating and strange, like a lot of ancient mythology is. So Andvari was a dwarf who lived under a waterfall. He also had the power to shapeshift into a fish, specifically a pike. He had this magical ring, the source of all his power and wealth. But Andvari, while in fish form, got trapped in the Norse god Loki's net. He'd been catching fish, but was pleasantly surprised when one of the fish turned into a dwarf and had a nice ring on one of his digits. Loki ended up swiping the ring from him. He needed the ring to pay off a debt after accidentally killing one of the dwarf king's sons, who'd taken on the form of an otter. Andvari then placed a curse on his ring, that whoever possessed it would be cursed with misfortune and ultimately meet a pretty grim fate. Well, Loki gave the ring to the dwarf king Hredmar to make amends, but it turned out that Andvari was also one of Hredmar's sons. Not knowing the ring was now cursed, tragedy befell pretty much his entire family. His sons became greedy for the ring and all met pretty grim fates once they got their hands on it. I'm summing things up, of course. This story would be the length of the entire video if I went into every detail, but this story probably does sound a bit familiar. Yes, it is one of the many pieces of ancient mythology that inspired Tolkien when writing Lord of the Rings. Next on the list, we have the Vale of York Hoard. This is a pretty cool artifact, or collection of artifacts, rather, that really encapsulates what Vikings were all about. Just traveling around and taking stuff. The artifacts were found in 2007 by a father and son using metal detectors. It was a gilt silver cup or pot, which is already a treasure in itself, but it contained more treasure, mostly coins, but there were also ornaments and bars of silver, jewelry, and the coolest part was that all of this stuff was from different parts of the world, mostly Europe, of course, but some of the items were from as far as Afghanistan. Like, Vikings, they live up to their name. They got around, and it's pretty amazing to see direct physical evidence of it with a collection like this. Now, were some of these items gifted to whoever this Viking was? Probably. They weren't like just pillaging and killing all the time like we've been mostly led to believe, but it's also pretty safe to say some of this stuff was taken by force or picked up after a raid. Next on the list, we have Viking teeth modifications. If you were like me, the dentist is one of the worst places you can be. Having stuff poking and prodding at your teeth it just hurts, and you're looking up at that light, and you feel like aliens are dissecting your body. It's just the worst. So imagine having lines and like shapes etched into your teeth. That would probably be pretty painful. But Vikings did it. It's not entirely clear why they'd modify their teeth, but we can speculate that it was to make them appear more fierce. Skeletal remains of ancient Norsemen have been dug up in Sweden and Denmark with horizontal grooves cut into their teeth. For the most part, they're just horizontal lines, but there have been other shapes found as well. Again, it's not 100% known why some of them did this, but it's said that maybe they dyed the grooves to create cool lines on their teeth, almost like tattoos. It would have been extremely painful again, and it wasn't super common, but it was definitely a bit of an ancient Swedish and Scandinavian trend. There are plenty of cultures around the world that would do something similar to this, but Vikings are the only known culture in medieval Europe to have practiced it. Now, I couldn't do this list without talking about Viking ships. I mean, remnants of Viking longboats have been found in various parts of Europe, and what an incredible feeling it would be to discover one of these things. Incredibly cool, but undeniably eerie at the same time. I mean, these ships crossed vast expanses of water carrying fierce warriors who completely changed the course of history in Europe. If there really are curses or dark forces that linger and latch themselves onto ancient artifacts, I mean, I think Viking ships are most definitely on that list. And the same goes for their weapons. I'm not quite sure what would be cooler to find, a longboat, a piece of Viking armor, or a weapon. I like swords, so I'm gonna go with a weapon, but let me know what you'd want to find down in the comments. Cursed swords and axes are pretty prevalent in Viking mythology, but again, if cursed objects really are a thing, pretty safe to say that these weapons that took the lives of so many unfortunate souls during Viking raids probably have some dark energy lingering on them of some kind. Again, if you believe in that sort of thing. And we're finishing off today's list with Naglfar, the ship of the dead. So in Norse mythology, Naglfar is this massive ship made entirely from the fingernails and toenails of the dead, which is pretty metal. Naglfar is said to be destined for a pretty ominous purpose. During Ragnarok, which is basically the end of the world in Norse beliefs, Naglfar is supposed to set sail. It's helmed by the giants, who are the enemies of the gods, and when Naglfar sails during Ragnarok, it's a sign that things are about to get very chaotic and apocalyptic. The idea of a ship made from nails might sound pretty strange, but in Norse mythology it's all about symbolism and just dramatic imagery. Naglfar represents this looming threat, this unstoppable force that signals the coming of Ragnarok and the ultimate showdown between the forces of good and the forces of evil. But a ship made of the fingers and toenails of the dead that sets sail at the coming of the apocalypse, that's about as cursed as it gets. It's easy to think that we've found everything there is to find about ancient cultures, but artifacts are being found all the time, all over the world. And today, I'm taking a look at some of the coolest recent discoveries of ancient artifacts. Let's jump right in. And we're going to start off the list with a very recent find. This just happened last month, which was February of 2024, for those who may be possibly watching in the distant future. A dude stumbled on a massive ancient Roman artifact in a riverbed. It was found in the gravel of the Torre River in San Vito al Torre. Arvino Silvestri was the one who first spotted the ancient artifact and alerted archaeologists. The riverbank was excavated, and the archaeologists uncovered a massive block of carved limestone, revealing it to be an ancient Roman funeral monument, weighed in at a whopping 13,000 pounds, and it was in pretty good condition. It's so big and heavy that it required an excavator for transportation. Pretty remarkable find, and quite beautiful as well. It has an intricately carved figure of Erotes on one end, holding a torch and a poppy flower. Erotes symbolized various things, including love and death. The decoration style suggested that the monument was from the high imperial era of ancient Rome, but at this point we still don't have an exact date range. At least it hasn't been released to the public yet. Again, this is still a very new find, but this wasn't all they found either. There was also a stone urn, a limestone carving depicting a man's face, and a number of bricks and tile pieces. Next on the list is what I'm just going to call the treasure trove. Now, this news just came out last week at the time of recording this video. Archaeologists in Panama unearthed an ancient burial site filled with treasures at El Caño Archaeological Park. The burial dates back between 750 AD and 800 AD and looks like it must have belonged to an elite lord. The burial revealed the remains of a high-status man who was likely between 30 and 40 when he died. Aside from bones, though, there was a whole bunch of treasure. Breastplates, belts adorned with gold, beads, intricate bracelets, earrings. There were even a pair of crocodile-shaped earrings, which is pretty cool. They also found gold-covered sperm whale teeth earrings. How extravagant is that? Not only do I have a necklace with whale teeth, but I gotta get them coated in gold too. That's not even all they found. They also uncovered bracelets and skirts made from dog teeth, bone flutes, and a bunch of pottery pieces. And on top of all the beautiful stuff this guy was buried with, he was also accompanied by a number of people who were sacrificed. He was incredibly rich, so he was just too above going into the afterlife alone. Next on the list, we have a horrifying pit of severed hands. Apparently severed hands were a big deal in ancient Egypt. Archaeologists made a pretty gruesome discovery when they came across pits filled with severed human hands. They were found during excavations of a palace near the ancient city of Avaris. These pits contained hundreds of severed hands, neatly stacked together, and the largest pit was right in front of the throne room. Researchers believe that these hands were severed from enemies captured in battles or raids. It's not entirely clear why these hands were collected and stored, but there have been images found of soldiers trading severed hands for gold, so some speculate that they might have been offerings to the gods or simply just trophies of victory. Next up, we have the Herxheim archaeological site. So back in 1996, during routine excavations, archaeologists came across this pit filled with human remains. Now, that's gotta be alarming even for an archaeologist. I can't imagine you ever get bored with finding human remains, but what made this find even creepier was how these folks had died. They weren't just the remnants of ordinary burials, there were signs that these people had been deliberately and systematically consumed by other humans. The bones all showed signs of butchering. Cut marks indicated careful dismemberment. It looked like these individuals were not just victims of violence, but also of ritualistic consumption. The pit contained the bones of over 500 people, dating back to the Neolithic period. Some suggest these folks were eaten as part of some sort of religious ritual, but other researchers think this may have been more a case of desperation. Possibly there could have been a famine. Next up, we have Neanderthal markings. So the recent discovery of ancient cave markings thought to be made by Neanderthals is obviously pretty exciting. The markings were found on the walls of a cave in central France and are believed to be over 57,000 years old, which would make them the oldest of their kind. The cave was first stumbled upon in 1846 during some quarrying work. It wasn't until 1912 that the archaeological finds started cropping up though, with the discovery of animal bones and tools that had likely belonged to Neanderthals. The cave seemed to have been sealed off from the outside world around 57,000 years ago, which is a hefty chunk of time before modern humans even set foot in the region around 42,000 years ago. So it's a solid bet that the finger marks on the walls were the handiwork of Neanderthals. So what are these markings exactly? They're a series of wavy lines, dots, and faint striations, and it's believed that Neanderthals created these engravings by sweeping and pressing their fingers across a thin line of film on the limestone walls. The height of the markings suggests they were made by taller beings, teenagers or adults, but were they decorative, ritualistic, were they even made intentionally? They're still not sure. Now we head back to Egypt with the discovery of an ancient Roman city in Luxor. The news about this incredible find was announced back in January of 2023. Egyptian archaeologists found a very well-preserved Roman city in Luxor, dating back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE. It's now been described as the oldest and most important city found on the eastern bank of Luxor by Mustafa Waziri, head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. The archaeological team unearthed a whole whackload of these ancient structures, including residential buildings, offering insights into how people lived during that time. There were also the discovery of 2 pigeon towers used for housing carrier birds, meaning this city was very likely involved in communication networks at the time. There were also metal workshops found in the city that contained whole collections of artifacts of their own, pots, tools, and a collection of bronze and copper Roman coins. Next up, we have the 4,500-year-old tomb. This is another recent 2024 archaeological discovery. I really tried to fill this list up with new stuff. So this discovery was made about 20 miles south of Cairo. Egyptian and Japanese archaeologists stumbled on an ancient Egyptian tomb carved into rock over 4,000 years ago. I always say stumbled on, like these archaeologists are just kind of walking around and they're like, oh, it's an ancient tomb. Obviously there's more that goes into it than that. It's just the easiest way for my brain to wrap my head around it. They stumbled on it. So anyway, the tomb was carved into rock over 4,000 years ago, dated back between 2649 and 2150 BC. The tomb contained a whole bunch of graves and artifacts from different historical periods. During their excavation, the team unearthed a bunch of treasures. There were human remains buried alongside a vividly colored mask, a burial site from the 2nd Dynasty, and an incredibly well-preserved alabaster vessel from the 18th Dynasty. In the tomb, there were also 2 terracotta statues depicting the ancient Egyptian goddess Isis and Harpocrates, along with a stela with a man's name encrypted on it, a man named Heroides. I think that's how you pronounce it. You've all heard of the Moai statues on Easter Island before, I know, but just last year, archaeologists found a new one. This new statue adds to the nearly 1,000 that have already been found on the island. This latest statue was uncovered in a dry lake bed, the only one to be found in that location. So far, anyway. The discovery was made by the organization that oversees the island's national park. Terry Hunt, a professor of archaeology at the University of Arizona, was incredibly excited about the find and described how important it is that these statues be retrieved, helping to preserve the history of the Rapa Nui people. So with how much attention and research has gone into the Easter Island statues, why was it that this one was just discovered now? Well, they're saying it's probably because of changes in the area's climate, resulting in the drying out of the lake that was surrounding the sculpture, and they're thinking it probably won't be the last one to turn up. Next, we have another exciting discovery. News about this came out just recently as well. A ton of cool artifacts were found in Brazil. And this one's pretty cool because this stuff was discovered completely by accident. This really was like stumbling on it. So there was a routine construction project going on at an apartment complex, but then construction workers came across a pretty alarming find, human bones, and then more and more stuff started turning up. There were also pottery shards, so these bones weren't recent. Turns out all this stuff belonged to an ancient civilization dating back as far as 9,000 years ago. During excavations, they found thousands of artifacts, and not only that, but these artifacts could possibly reshape the understanding of human settlement in Brazil. The site known as Rosanne's Farm was full of stone tools, ceramic fragments, decorated shells, and bones, which was excavated over the course of 4 years of intense digging. And in total, 43 human skeletons and more than 100,000 artifacts were uncovered. Archaeologists unearthed remnants of a group that existed around 8,000 to 9,000 years ago, meaning that humans moved into the region much earlier than previously believed. The leader of the excavation stated the discovery could, quote, completely change the history of not just the region, but all of Brazil. End quote. This finding may totally change the way we look at the timing and the roots of human migration into the Americas from Asia, which is pretty cool. And we're finishing off the list with the finding of a mysterious Anglo-Saxon artifact, again just in January of this year, in Langham, England. A treasure hunter made a pretty cool discovery with a metal detector. It was a small artifact made of gilded silver. It was just under an inch in diameter and 0.3 inches in height. Apparently it dates back to the 8th century. It also has an image of an animal engraved on top, along with Celtic knot-like patterns. Not entirely clear what the object is. The Portable Antiquities Scheme, who are responsible for recording finds like this, noted the thing is similar to other items discovered in the same time period, but this one stands out because of its size and its design. Historian Helen Giak speculated that the spiral pattern on the artifact looked a lot like Celtic designs, and that the animal depicted could be a horse. Definitely what it looks like to me as well.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Dropa stones. In 1938, archaeologist Dr. Chipute led an expedition near the Bayan Har Mountains in China. That's when they came across some interesting caves. These caves held evidence that ancient life once lived in them. After searching the caves, they found weird discs buried under thick layers of dust. These discs resembled phonograph records. Researchers dated them to be over 10,000 years old. Now, they didn't play music like a typical record, but instead they had hieroglyphics carved into them. When studied, it told a story about a spaceship that crashed into the mountains. Aboard the spaceship were people that called themselves the Dropa. Then later on, the discs were sent to Moscow for further studying.
That's when they were placed on this special turntable, and the discs would vibrate or hum in a weird rhythm, as if an electric charge was passing through them. After that, research on the discs stopped. Or some believe research continued and they found/contacted alien life, which they just didn't tell the public. Either way, this is said to be one of the most mysterious artifacts in the world. In our 9th spot, we have the alien. And guys, here's just your little friendly reminder to hit that thumbs up button. In 2017, a man in Cusco made a pretty terrifying discovery in the southern desert of Peru. The artifact he found looks exactly like a tiny, mummified alien head. An X-ray concluded that the skull had very alien-type features. The skull had angled eyelids with shallow eye sockets, 2 nostrils, and a narrow slit-type mouth. Now, whoever was in possession of the skull actually covered it in a type of clay, so that's what you see on the top of it, which makes it appear to look more like an alien. Researchers discovered that it is indeed a real skull, but they don't know what it belonged to. So it may just be that this skull belonged to a real-life alien from space. Moving on to number 8, we have the Wedge of Aiud. Back in 1974, construction workers in Romania were working in a village in Aiud when they came across some pretty weird objects. These objects were buried 30 feet in the sand by a river. 2 of the objects were bones from mastodons, which are very distant relatives of an elephant. I mean, that's cool and all, but the thing that really caught their attention was this mysterious wedged-shaped object that was located by the bones. This object contained 89% aluminum, 6% copper, and a total of 12 elements altogether. Here's the thing. Aluminum was discovered around 1825, yet this wedge lay next to bones that are from 11,000 years ago. The timeline just doesn't add up. The wedge itself is theorized to be around 10,000 years old. People believe that this object couldn't have existed way back then. An aeronautical engineer stated that this object looks exactly like a piece of a landing gear for landing aircrafts. This has left researchers to believe that aliens crashed their craft from space maybe 11,000 years ago. In our 7th spot, we have the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a piece of a stone slab found in 1799. It has a message carved into it written in 3 different types of scripts. You got ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, Demotic scripts, and ancient Greek. This stone is the key to decipher Egyptian scripts. In 1814, British scientist Thomas Young started studying the stone and made some progress on cracking it. But it wasn't until 1822 to 1824 that the hieroglyphic code was finally cracked. This was done by French linguist Jean-François Champollion. It's hypothesized that the slab was created in Egypt in 196 BC, but we still don't know who created it. Now, this one is more of a conspiracy, but it's actually thought that the Rosetta Stone was made by aliens, and they delivered it to us from space. Obviously, there's no solid evidence to support this. In fact, archaeologist Paul Wasson believes the Rosetta Stone has lessons to teach us about creating a message that will allow us to communicate with aliens. Because we can't just assume that aliens speak English. In our 6th spot, we have the UFO tooth wheel. This is another artifact that is said to have come from aliens in space. So basically, back in the day, a Russian man was using coal to heat his home when he saw something sticking out of a piece of coal. He reported his findings, and researchers said it looked like a tooth wheel to some device. After tests were run on it, it was discovered that it was composed of 98% aluminum and 2% magnesium. Now remember what I said before? Humans discovered how to first make aluminum in 1825. But the piece of coal this artifact was found in was 300 million years old. So how is that even possible? In fact, the tooth wheel resembles parts that we currently use in microscopes and electronic devices. Again, back in the day, they didn't have any of those devices, so what the heck. Scientists are still running tests on this object to one day figure out who created it and figure out what its original purpose was. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the iron beads. Back in the day, it was found that ancient Egyptians created iron beads. They were carefully hammered into thin sheets, and then they would roll these into tubes. Then they would string them together and make a necklace. While studying them, they found the necklaces were over 5,000 years old. It was also revealed that the beads were made out of pieces from meteorites, and then they would hammer that down. Not only that, but it was revealed that the Egyptians had a more advanced understanding of metalsmithing than we originally thought. Moving on to number 4, we have the valuable meteorite. There's a meteorite out there that is more valuable than gold. It was April 23, 2019, and a weird colorful orb flew across the skies of Costa Rica. It was orange and green in color. This object was about the size of a washing machine. And then, just like that, it broke up into pieces that got scattered between 2 villages. One of the pieces was discovered by a woman named Marcia Campos Munoz. She heard the rumble and saw something crash down on her property. She was one of the few people to find a piece of this meteorite. Now, meteorites show up all the time on Earth, so what's so special about this one? Well, it turns out they belong to a rare class called carbonaceous chondrites. They formed when the solar system was still developing. It's believed that these pieces of meteorites will help us figure out what early solar system life was like. Moving on, at number 3, we have the ancient battery. Back in 1936, outside of Baghdad, a weird discovery was made. They discovered a small clay jar with an iron rod hanging in a copper cylinder in it. This was then soldered shut and sealed with asphalt. Upon analyzing it, it was discovered to produce small amounts of electricity. In fact, researchers said it looks like an ancient battery. However, we still don't know who created this and what its purpose was. But many people believe that this was a battery from an alien spacecraft that crashed down on Earth several thousands of years ago. Aliens are said to be very advanced species, so it could be that they figured out batteries and electricity way before humans ever did. Coming in at number 2, we have the alien spacecraft. In 2017, a Hawaiian man with a telescope spotted this weird object leaving the solar system. This object was named Oumuamua, and it's considered the first known interstellar object detected passing through the solar system. Here's the thing. Many people believe that this thing is an alien spacecraft. Let me explain. This thing looks like a space rock, but it's not a comet or asteroid. It's too small and oddly shaped to be an asteroid. The thing is long and shaped like a rocket. No asteroids that we know of are shaped like that. Not only that, but astronomers thought the first space rock to enter our solar system would be a ball of ice and rocks. A comet. But usually there's a cloud of dust and gas surrounding comets, and this object doesn't have that. So then what on earth is it? On top of that, it's said to emit blue colors from it. As a result, rumor has it that it's actually an alien spacecraft. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Hypatia stone. In 2013, a weird stone made its way to Earth from space. This stone has managed to leave scientists baffled. They claim it's unlike any other extraterrestrial rock ever found. In 2015, while analyzing the stone, they found it was not part of a meteorite or comet. So they were puzzled as to where it came from. Researcher Jan Kramer said, and I quote, "The stone's matrix contains a high amount of very specific carbon compounds, called polyaromatic hydrocarbons, or PAH, a major component of interstellar dust, which existed even before our solar system was formed." Meaning, this stone is super old, like it was around before the sun and planets had formed. It's mind-blowing, and they still haven't found out all about it.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Ulfbert swords. Imagine if Excalibur was real and it wasn't just a story after all. Here at number 10, we have swords that are so powerful, they still have experts baffled. When you think of medieval times, you probably picture a bunch of people carrying cool broadswords everywhere, but in reality, swords were actually incredibly expensive to have made, even around this time, anywhere between 1200 to 24 grand in today's currency for one sword. And that's just for a pretty good sword. For a really good sword, well, get ready to sell your soul, man. The Ulfbert swords were the strongest, sharpest, and most flexible swords ever made, though no one really knows who made them, except maybe a guy named Ulfbert, but there's no record of him. Primarily associated with Vikings, researchers speculate that the swords were made in the Kingdom of Francia. The Kingdom of Francia, now France and Germany. These suckers could even cut through chainmail and were the perfect blend of materials. The process for combining the materials required a 1600 degrees Celsius oven, which was not only hot enough to melt the metals, but also helped draw out any impurities. However, here's where things get weird. The process couldn't be replicated until the industrial era, after the sword stopped production after 200 years. So how could they have been made before that? No one knows who began it and who carried on the tradition, but the blade still remains some of the finest ever made in history.
Coming in at number 9, we have Stonehenge. Located in Wiltshire, England, the Stonehenge is one of UK's most famous landmarks. It consists of a bunch of standing stones in a ring, with some stones placed on top of each other. It's said to have taken 1,500 years to build this. It was built around 5,000 to 4,000 years ago. Some stones are 30 feet tall and weigh 25 tons. The smallest stones weigh about 4 tons. So how the heck did these people manage to build this big structure? That is something we still don't have the answers to. It's not like they had the machinery back then to help them. So how did they move these hefty rocks and then get them on top of each other? Did they possess superhuman strength or what? Not only that, but we don't know why they were built. Some believe that it was part of a burial ground. Others think that it was part of ritual activities, but we still don't know for sure. And unless a builder comes back from the dead to tell us, I doubt we'll ever figure out what the purpose behind Stonehenge is. In our 7th spot, we have the Petrodox. This next artifact is quite strange and might have been made by aliens. Let me explain. So back in 1998, a man named John J. Williams discovered something quite strange. He was out hiking in North America when he saw this thing sticking out of the ground. It looked as if it was an electrical connector. When he unearthed it, he discovered that this device was embedded into a rock. The rock has 3 metallic prongs just sticking out of it, and it wasn't glued or welded into the rock, leading researchers to believe that it existed while the rock was forming. But here's the thing, research shows that the rock is 100,000 years old. Back then, we didn't have electrical components like that, so what the heck? Now, Williams won't let anyone break into the object to further analyze it, but x-rays done on the stone show that it has a weird opaque internal structure. He's convinced that this thing is from an advanced ancient civilization, or from an extraterrestrial race, aka aliens. Like, I'm not gonna lie, but it's pretty weird, so just saying.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Baghdad Battery. Here is yet another example of how our ancestors absolutely soared past our expectations of them. We thought electricity was just a modern thing. A 2,000-year-old battery discovered by Wilhelm Koenig in 1940. It was uncovered during a dig of an ancient village near Baghdad and set the minds of archaeologists spinning. It is a 5.5-inch high clay vessel with a copper cylinder inside and an oxidized iron rod suspended within the cylinder, not touching the sides, and the 2 entrances are closed off by asphalt plugs. It is suspected that this makeshift battery served as a way of electroplating gold onto silver, only needing to be filled with some kind of acid like wine or vinegar in order to work. Today, some researchers believe that it was actually just a storage container, but that's not true. Come on. But replicas created by American electrical researcher Willard Gray after World War II actually produced around 2 volts of electricity. I love discoveries like this because it tells us just how ahead of the game we were and gave a delicious dose of foreshadowing at where we are heading as a civilization.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the witch bottles. Back in 2019, contractors were demolishing the chimney of a pub and inn in England when they came across something frightening. Inside the chimney were bottles containing things such as fish hooks, human teeth, and urine. But this isn't actually that weird of a find. In the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, people kept these in their home. They were referred to as witch bottles and were meant to keep witches away. Some of the bottles had fingernails and hair in them, and those were meant to act like charms to ward them away. But they were most commonly filled with pins, thorns, and urine. Apparently, the urine attracted the witches to the bottle, and then they would be trapped on the pins. These bottles have been found in churchyards, old buildings, and riverbanks all across Great Britain. I mean, I think that would be a pretty cool discovery if you found that in your house, just minus the jars of urine.
Coming in at number 4, we have a 250,000-year-old aluminum wedge. Aluminum, a material found in every kitchen for barbecue or just like cooking in general. It's one of the most commonplace materials found on Earth, making up approximately 8.2% of the Earth's crust. However, we as humans only figured out how to extract it in the 1800s, taking even longer to figure out how to make it cost effective to do so. So when researchers found a 5-pound crafted aluminum object in Romania, buried next to 10,000-year-old mastodon bones, they had some questions. The object has clearly been crafted by someone for some purpose and is a combination of several materials, aluminum making up 89% of that. The aluminum wedge has been theorized to have been everything from a tool to a landing foot of perhaps an extraterrestrial ship. This object also feeds into the theory that there was a far advanced human civilization that existed long before us that was wiped out. This isn't the first time we've talked about aliens and forgotten civilizations, and honestly, the more videos we make, I'm getting swept away by the possibilities, because how nuts would that be? Anyways, whatever it was used for or whomever it used to belong to remains a mystery and leaves more questions than answers behind.
In our third spot, we have the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1799 and is a broken off section of a bigger stone slab. On it, it contains messages written in 3 different types of scripts: ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, Demotic scripts, and ancient Greek. This stone is said to be the key to decipher Egyptian scripts. The stone was discovered by soldiers belonging to Napoleon Bonaparte's army. In July of 1799, they were digging around and found it near the town of Rashid, and it was built into an old wall. In 1814, British scientist Thomas Young started studying the stone and made some progress with cracking it. But it wasn't until 1822 to 1824 that the hieroglyphic code was cracked. This was done by French linguist Jean-François Champollion. It's hypothesized that the slab was created in Egypt in 196 BC, but we still don't know who created it, and honestly, why. Some say it holds the key to be able to communicate with aliens, and that it actually came from space. At this point, who knows? Maybe we just seem like we love aliens.
Coming in at number 2, we have the Nazca Lines. Despite years of research, the Nazca Lines still don't make sense. For those of you who haven't heard, the Nazca Lines are massive geoglyphs that can even be seen from space. In fact, they can only be seen fully from the sky. Located 250 miles south of Lima, Peru, created by the Nazca people, there are over 70 precise depictions of animals including spiders and hummingbirds, plus an image of a decapitation and a large humanoid figure known as the astronaut. Guys, come on, aliens. Some of the designs from the geoglyphs measure around 30 miles, and experts have no idea how or why these drawings were created with such precision. After all, humans lack the tools to build such incredible designs. Or did they? It really makes you wonder what abilities or perhaps extraterrestrial intelligence was available to the Nazca people that we can't comprehend today.
And in our number 1 spot, we have the Shroud of Turin, otherwise known as the Holy Shroud. This is a piece of linen that is said to have been wrapped around Jesus during his burial. What's fascinating is how this piece of linen cloth appears to have a facial outline of Jesus' face. Of course, over the years there have been disputes to whether or not this is authentic. But in the 1970s, it was discovered that the markings on the cloth were consistent with a crucified body, and that the blood stains on it were from real human blood. But others argue that the shroud doesn't come from the right time period as Jesus. And in 2018, a team of researchers claimed that the bloodstains couldn't have come from him. Either way, it acts kind of like a symbol for the story of Christ. If it's not real, then someone please explain to me the whole face and body print that I see on it, because I'm genuinely curious. Starting off this countdown, we have King Tut's dagger. Upon excavating the tomb of King Tut in 1925, scientists discovered a long 34-centimeter dagger wrapped up with King Tut. Now, back then there was no way for them to do studies on the dagger without damaging it. However, an X-ray done in 1970 showed that the dagger was made of some interesting compounds, primarily nickel and iron. Back then, iron was considered very rare. And how could it have been composed of iron when his burial predated Egypt's Iron Age by nearly 2,000 years? So right there, that's a little shocking. As a result of the iron and nickel composition, scientists have declared it was made from extraterrestrial metal. Now, there are 2 theories here. One is that a meteorite crashed down and then they used that to make the dagger. Theory 2 is that the dagger was made by aliens and dropped or left by them accidentally. I mean, some honestly do think that the ancient Egyptians were in contact with aliens. If that's the case, then the dagger might have originally been from the ETs. Coming in at number 8, we have the US Delta II rocket. Back in January of 1997, a woman named Lottie Williams was out minding her own business on a nice little walk. To her surprise, she was greeted by a streak of light in the sky. All of a sudden, she felt something brush her shoulder. Turns out that this thing that brushed her was part of a US Delta II rocket. The rocket was launched in 1996. A year later, it came crashing down in pieces. Lottie said when she felt something brush by, she turned around and saw something on the ground. It was a small piece of burnt mesh. Now she is extremely lucky because had it been a bigger piece, it probably would have knocked her down and killed her. Here's the thing, analysis shows that it's most likely part of the Delta II rocket. Most likely, still not 100% confirmed. For all we know, that could be a piece from an alien spacecraft.
Coming in at number 7, we have the pyramids. Here's the thing, do I actually think that pyramids came from space? Do I think that aliens came down from space and came to humans and were like, dudes, we're aliens, we're from the future, we got tech, it's so cool, it's gonna blow your socks off, and we're gonna make a civilization so sick with some big triangles that come out of the ground, and you can put your coolest dead bodies in them. No, I don't think that. I think that the pyramids were made with an insane amount of manpower because back then life was cheaper than it is now, and you could just have an army of slaves move rocks until they physically couldn't and then could just bring in a new army. That's how I think they did it. Also, no one had a phone back then, so you couldn't even get distracted while you were on the job. What are you gonna try and do, build a sandcastle? That would have been impossible because there was literally no water around. But that being said, there are a lot of people who think that the pyramids could have been built by some alien coming down to Earth and giving humans the tools to build these monuments with the precision of having them pointing at north, east, south, and west, with some people thinking that they are power plants that could create electricity. I think most of the people who think that have never been to Egypt, but you know it's good to make those assumptions after watching 30 minutes worth of YouTube videos.
Moving on to number 6, we have the Russian tank. In March of 2011, a man was out hiking in northwestern Colorado when he came across something strange. The object was round and warm to touch. It was also in a crater, meaning whatever this was had just crashed down from space. The hiker then called military aerospace officials. Later, it was revealed that this weird object was the tank from a Russian Zenit 3 rocket. The rocket was launched in January. 2 months later, it came crashing back down. Fun fact, it's one of only a handful of space debris to be found in the US. But seriously, imagine being out for a walk and seeing something fly towards you from the sky. Like damn, that's another thing to worry about, being killed by space debris.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Roman Decahedron. Some sort of 3D octagon, and no one knows what they do. Like 0 people have been able to figure out what these things were for, and one of the weirdest parts about them is that we have found a lot of them. They seem to all come from the Roman era and were moved out to every territory that the Romans controlled. There are over 100 of these strange devices that have been found, and there are several guesses as to what they could do. Some people think they could have been some sort of status symbol. To have one in your home would have meant you were rich and in good graces with the Emperor of Rome. They might have just been decoration, or they could have been some sort of communication device from space, and it's how the Romans were able to be so powerful.
In our 4th spot, we have the Roswell rock. This rock is a very weird rock with a detailed design. The rock is uniform in color, unusually smooth, and has a design protruding from the surface of it. This rock was found in Roswell, New Mexico in 2004 by a man named Robert Ridge. He was a deer hunter. Apparently, he found this rock half sticking out of the ground and was shocked by its unusual and perfect design, as well as its strange magnetic properties. Upon analyzing it, people have realized that the rock's design actually matches a crop circle that was found in England in 1996, which makes this whole thing that much weirder. Now, some are convinced that this rock is some message sent by aliens. After experts have analyzed the design, they noticed that it's a pattern of a sun and a moon inside of a circle. A woman named Linda Moulton Howe, who's an investigative journalist, believes that aliens are trying to teach us about astronomy with this rock, or that the rock contains a date for some event that has or will happen. It's pretty spooky. I just wish we knew more about this weird rock.
Coming in number 3, we have fungus. When you look at all the living beings on this planet, why has fungus got its own spot? I mean, those things are just plants, right? Wrong. Fungus are some of the most advanced life forms on the planet. They have functionality that spreads in extreme diversity from species to species. Some of them have the ability to mind control a host and then kill it so it spreads spores. Others have advanced communication techniques that allow them to find the most direct routes to one another. Because of this, there's speculation that fungus might have come here by aliens or might have touched down on Earth via meteor.
And at number 2 we have the Betts Mystery Sphere. On March 27th, 1974, the Betts family were out examining a small bushfire near their property. While doing so, the family came across a completely smooth metal sphere. It was about the size of a bowling ball. On this sphere there was a triangle engraved in it. They took it home only to find that it had strange properties. One day when their son was playing his guitar in the same room as this sphere, it started to emit a throbbing sound from it. The sound was strong enough to hurt the family's dog's ears. This sphere can also change directions, so if you push it across the floor, it will roll forward and then stop and then roll back all on its own. It's also said to be able to absorb power from solar energy. It's said to be more active when exposed to the sun. Now, they refused to let anyone analyze it until they linked the sphere to paranormal activity that was happening around the house. Like doors would slam by themselves and they would hear this weird organ music. Now, scientists have analyzed it and they said it was just a normal sphere. How late? But the family is convinced that something is controlling it. Maybe something of the extraterrestrial nature. Seriously, where did this sphere come from and what's the deal with its weird properties? Seems like it came from space.
And coming at the number 1 spot, we have alien coins. So who do we always see plastered on coins? Well, it's our most rich and famous people, the ones that define our culture at the time, or the rulers that control the area, and if you don't put their face on the money, they will for sure cut your head off. Well, then there's a bunch of questions as to why some alien coins were found in Egypt. There was a massive renovation done on some homes in Egypt, which dug up one of the strangest artifacts to date. They were a series of coins that were found that had not a queen's head on them or a pharaoh, but an alien dude, like the one that looks like he's pulled right out of the movies, like the green dude with the big head and the green skin, and you know, all that stuff going on. You guys know what I'm talking about. But this dude had like a toga on, so he kind of looked a little bit boss. There were also several coins that were found that seemed to have spaceships on them. If the ruler theory is right, there could have been an alien ruler who came down from the stars in ancient Egypt, someone who maybe crash landed and needed to get his ship fixed, and while he was waiting for his repairs to be done, he was worshipped like a god.
Number 10, Uluru Rock. I'll be honest, I'm a rock guy. I go on vacation, I'm goggles up the entire time. I love looking for geology and history. It's hard not to want to bring something home every trip, right? But depending where you are, you could be in a lot of trouble for doing so. In the Northern Territory of Australia, for example, there is a beautiful monumental sandstone formation. It's known as Ayers Rock or Uluru Rock. Now, this site is sacred for the Aboriginal people of the land. They respectfully ask that no visitors take any piece of the sandstone home with them. Yet of course, some of us can't follow simple instructions, and in numerous cases, bad luck has followed them home as well. Breakups, death of a loved one, you name it, it's all bad. Why risk it? Just leave things alone, you know? Number 9. Robert the Evil Doll. A man named Rob Otto, he was given a doll that looked a lot like him. One of his servants who didn't like him made him this doll. This was clearly a voodoo doll, right? Obviously, this is an obvious trap. Neighbors would then hear Robert talking to this doll. Robert and Robert the podcast, I guess. I don't know, tune in. Now, after Robert's untimely death, the new owners of the house found that same doll. They found it in the attic, still there. That family was haunted afterwards by the same doll. They would hear threats coming from it at night, so now the doll is on display at a museum in Key West. No more threats, just glass cage forever. Number 8. Elmo. The Sesame Street icon has been in homes for many, many years. There was a literal stampede when Tickle Me Elmo was released. An employee was sadly trampled, got his ribs broken, it was horrible. People go crazy for these things. When the Elmo Knows Your Name toy was launched by Fisher-Price back in 2005, there were 15,000 names ready to go. Only one family was traumatized. Only one. That's not bad, all things considered. That Elmo toy apparently spoke on its own, threatening to harm the family, often, so they tossed it out immediately. This happened more than once though. The audio sounded off for some devices in some homes. Be Like Elmo sounded like Beat Up Elmo. The Elmo phone was also released in 2009 and it often said 456, but in some cases it sounded like Who Wants to Have Very different things, those two. Those are two different phrases. Those are not the same at all. We're all learning things with Elmo, whether you like it or not. Number 7. Belcourt Castle chairs. This one's like the opposite of musical chairs. These chairs are no fun at all. This Rhode Island ballroom is beautiful. It's a cottage mansion, a lot of wood, a lot of history. It smells great, I bet. I would have bet that there would be a ghost woman in the ballroom. Turns out it's actually a handful of chairs. Who knew? That was my second guess. Handful of chairs. That's good. Visitors have reported an eerie feeling when standing close to these chairs. They get the chills, they get this sense of energy almost. Now, things certainly go a step further. Some guests have seen the chair move on their own, or they've had the chairs push against them, all of course by some invisible force. I'm not sure if I believe in ghosts personally, but if I saw a chair moving, yeah, that would do it. Just one of those would definitely flip my beliefs for sure. Haunted furniture, that gets me. That's pretty bad. Number 6, the haunted skull. I'm pretty sure every skull is haunted. No, but I don't know. This one specifically, ooh, this one's real haunted though. Here we go. Located in the Burton Agnes Hall over in England, the screaming skull sits quite still, but its curse is very real and very active. The screaming skull once belonged to Catherine Ann Griffith, who died in 1620. Now, reports of strange figures or shadows around the skull, that's one thing, but many people believe they could still hear the screams of one Catherine Ann Griffith to this day. Number 5, the unlucky mummy. Right off the bat, the unlucky mummy isn't an actual mummy per se. It's rather the lid of a coffin that once belonged to a high status woman who lived sometime around 950 BCE. So a little old, little time ago. The mummy board wasn't seen again until the early 1800s AD. It was found in Thebes. 4 Englishmen found it, and of course they were celebrating this ancient piece of history, but it didn't take long for all 4 of those men to pass away from mysterious circumstances. If you're looking for more top 10s on ancient history, come meet me over on our top 10 history channel. It's called Bumblebee. We do top 10s only on historical stuff. Ancient eras, mummies, silly Victorian era hats, cool shoes, I don't know, you name it. It's all over at Bumblebee. See you there. Number 4. Mandy the Haunted Doll. Mandy lives in the Quesnel Museum in Canada. Awesome, nice and close to home. The staff of the museum insists that Mandy is kept in a separate display case all by herself, because when she's with other dolls, she would end up knocking them over somehow, some way. Staff also reported that their lunches would disappear and that photos of the doll would end up glitching out. The lunches disappearing, that's for sure one dude who's blaming ghosts. That's actually not a bad plan. I'm okay with that. But the photos, that's terrifying. That's a surefire sign that it's haunted. Number 3. The Great Bed of Ware. We figured we'd get nice and cozy for this next one. For starters, it's massive and it's cozy. It looks like the bed a king would certainly sleep in, and rightfully so. The Great Bed of Ware was built for the royal family back in 1463. It was 12 feet by 12 feet. Jonas Fosbrook, a carpenter from that time, they impressed King Edward IV so much with their work that the king gave them a pension for the rest of their life. People would travel all across the land to see this bed. That's a fun family vacation. Yeah, we're gonna go see a bed. Yeah, Disneyland's closed today. Let's go see this bed. Shakespeare mentioned this bed in his play The Twelfth Night, okay? This is a big deal. All those who stayed in the bed though, they did not have a good night's rest. No, instead they woke up to scratches and bruises, or they would wake up just on the floor. Yeah, somehow they would roll out of a 12-foot bed. Today it can be found in the Victoria and Albert Museum in case you wanna go in there and take a nap. Would you stay the night in this old haunted, dirty, and probably very uncomfortable bed? Sound off below, I definitely wouldn't. Number 2. The Baker's Wedding Dress. Back in 1849 in the small town of Altoona, Pennsylvania, Elias Baker and his wife Hetty lived in the Baker mansion. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter named Anna Baker. Anna had fallen in love with one of her father's employees. Nice. Another steel worker, but her father wouldn't allow the relationship to take off. So Anna vowed to never marry again ever. She locked herself in her room for the time being. And when her father passed away in 1848, she went to find her true love again, but he had since moved on and settled down. Yeah, worst case scenario. So she spent the rest of her days behaving erratically, and her soul apparently still haunts that same wedding dress today. Not just the dress, also the mansion is apparently haunted as well. Guests would report furniture moving around. What's with ghosts and moving furniture? Where were these guys when I was moving? And finally, number 1, the Bassano vase. This vase comes from the 15th century. It made for an excellent wedding gift, of course, in Italy one day, but the night before, the big day, bride sadly lost her life with the vase still in her possession. So the family kept it afterwards, of course, but as the vase was passed down the family line, a pattern began to unveil itself. It was kind of hard to ignore. Whomever held possession of the Bassano vase died shortly after in some way, shape, or form. Now keep in mind, this was the 15th century, so the average lifespan was 30 to 40 years old on a good day. But after many deaths in the family, family, it was packed away for good, just to be safe. Or so they thought. The vase showed up again in 1988 alongside a note. The note was pretty to the point. It said, "Beware, this vase brings death." End of note. Pretty simple, I like it. Whoever found it was probably like, huh, okay, and then continued on with it. And then it was auctioned for over $2,000 sans note. Weird, they left the note out of that, that's odd. The pharmacist who won the auction, well, you guessed it, passed away within months.
Number 10. Pompeii graffiti. What do Romans and Zoomers have in common? Probably their love for weird and semi-unfunny memes. Yes, even thousands of years in the past, people were leaving all sorts of tasteful messages on the walls for all to see. Insults, compliments, but more interestingly, threats. Most of these are obviously jovial in nature, but there is one that does stand out as interesting. The message reads, "To the one defecating here, beware of the curse. If you look down on this curse, may you have an angry Jupiter for an enemy." Seems silly enough, right? Well, it is, until you learn that it was found at Pompeii, the city buried by a volcano. Sounds like a fairly wrathful act, eh? Seems like Jupiter was being a bit of a party pooper. Number 9. Hans Holbein's The Ambassadors. Hans Holbein is a classic artist, but one of his most famous works stands out as a grim omen. In 1533, Holbein would be commissioned to portray ambassadors Jean de Dinfy of France and Georges de Sèvres of Lavaur. This work is an excellent piece, but it includes an enigmatic secret, a strangely proportioned skull. There are numbers of theories as to why this was included, one of the most popular coming from Oscar Bachmann and Pascal Grenier, who suggest that the skull is meant to contrast the beauty and value found within life against the grandeur of death. Holbein would pass almost exactly 1 decade later, which arguably completes the implication of this message in its entirety. Number 8. The Voyager messages. The Voyager deep space program helped NASA further its understanding of the solar system with absolutely breathtaking images of the universe that were sent back to Earth. However, those messages weren't the only thing that the Voyagers were meant to carry. Inside each probe is a golden phonograph disc titled The Sounds of Earth, which include several greetings, sounds of whales, a crying baby, waves on a shoreline, music from a scatterplot of important musicians from around the world, and greetings in around 55 different languages. While this seems like a friendly handshake from one part of the universe to another, the question must be asked, what will find this disk? What will they think of us? And what will they do next? The Voyagers are still out there, and they are expected to no longer be able to transmit anything to us in roughly around 2036. Which probably means that if anything does find them, we won't be getting a warning until they're here. Number 7. The Mayan calendar. Portents of doom are common enough in history. However, 2012 was an interesting year for such fears, as the turn of a new millennium caused a number of people to become absolutely certain that the world would end. To justify their claims, they looked to the past, and one message seemed to leave people more certain than others. Now, let's be clear, the Mayans didn't actually make this calendar. That would have to be attributed to the early Mesoamericans, who termed the end of a period of the time as the Baktun. Baktun 13 was the end of a particularly large period, and when lined up with our calendar, it matched up alongside the date of December 2012. So, was the message true? It was fun at the time, but after the date passed, the real horror was revealed as people admitted to selling their possessions and homes with the expectation that they just wouldn't need them anymore. all because of a calendar period ending in a way that most computer technicians would just describe as stack overflow. Like, your car doesn't explode when you max out the mileage counter, it just resets to 0. So the terror here was more that people actually believed this crap, just because the Mesoamericans didn't make a Baktun 14. Jeez. Number 6. Qin Shi Huang's meteor. So in 211 BC, the Qin dynasty was in full swing and everyone was having a great time, suffering under the rule of their tyrannical overlord Qin Shi Huang. Suddenly, a meteor fell from the sky, landing in the province of Dongjun. Upon inspection, the meteor was revealed to have been inscribed with the words, "The first emperor will die, and his land will be divided." Whether or not this was an elaborate hoax or not, the emperor was paranoid enough to demand that the writer come forward, and when no one did, he had everyone who lived in the area executed. The funny thing is, a year later it came true. Qin Shi Huang died, and while China remained somewhat unified, the Qin dynasty fell only 3 years later. And soon after that, the Han dynasty took over, ending the Qin dynasty's short reign. Unfortunately, the meteor was shattered, so this brilliant moment has been permanently lost to time. Number 5. Egyptian tomb curses. Egypt. One of the greatest civilizations known to mankind. Thank goodness that a bunch of Europeans decided to rob the graves of their ancestors, or else they'd have been really bored or something. However, when these losers decided to pop open those tombs, likely searching for gold, they instead found a cavalcade of curses. Some of these read as such: "Any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin, may his heir not inherit. As for all men who shall enter my tomb, there will be judgment. I shall cast the fear of myself into him. And all who enter this tomb will make evil against it. May the crocodile be against them in the water, and the snakes against them on land. May the hippopotamus be against them in water, and the scorpion on land.